with black nationalism, I feel like, yeah, it can only be achieved, this is my personal opinion, in Africa. And the reason being is because, yes, there is race and prejudice, you know, in parts of Africa as well. You can see what's going on in South Africa with the Dutch and the Europeans that are there who claim to be obviously South Africans because they've lived there and whatnot. Fair enough. Who are fighting obviously the black farmers who are trying to get back their land. You've got the situation of a lot of racial prejudice in Sudan, and you know the country's separate now. You've got South and North Sudan, and a lot of those East African countries where you have a lot of heavy Catholicism and Islamic influence, dividing, you know, parties, dividing villages, and all that sort of stuff. But I feel as diasporans, I feel as black people and those that ally themselves with us, we can achieve black nationalism. I personally believe in Africa. The ladders are smaller, are easier to get to, easier to climb. There is a notion of respect because, you know, we're black and people understand, and you know, people understand community, people understand what's going on. So essentially, when you're looking at the whole nationalism side of things, it would be easier, I personally think, back in Africa. So yeah, and also the main point with Africa as well, there is a quality of life. Now, will it work for everyone? I don't know, because like you said, some people are thinking this is it. You know, I don't even see myself outside of my area. I don't see myself outside of South London, let alone London. You know, if you look at the mindset of people when they're traveling, people will fly to European countries for a holiday. Some people will be like, oh, we're going to go Spain, we're going to go Tenerife, we're going to go Portugal. And you ask and say, why don't you want to go, like, why don't you go Africa? Why don't you try, like, I don't know, Mozambique? The facial expression alone will show you, nah, like, oh, there's flies. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's flies there, or, you know, am I going to get malaria? Again, certain stereotypes that the media has put into our head, of how dirty Africa is supposed to be. But yeah, what do you think when it comes to that? Do you think we need black nationalism as black people?
100%. I think it's overdue, to be honest. I feel like we do, because I feel like every other race has their own, and I think that's, when I say their own, I mean like when you long story short, I'm just gonna say again, every other race has their own, and I feel like black people don't have that thing that is their own, and I feel like there's such a divide. I know you do have things like the United Nations. Again, it's not solely something that has the interests of Africa or even the Caribbean in mind, and I think that's what's missing, is there being some form of governing body that's not corrupt, that is like, okay, we've got the best interests of these people, and therefore when other things happen around the world, or injustices, we can challenge and support that person. It's kind of like how, when you look at, for example, I can't remember where I saw this, but there was a guy speaking and he was like, do you think that it could be as publicized as it is now in terms of on the news, on social media streams, of police treating, let's say, a Chinese person in that way, and China's not going to step up or step in and say or do anything on that scale? And it's like, they were like, the thing is, black people don't have that. Like, where is it? Who's speaking up for these things that are happening? Who's speaking up for these people? It's like, you die in America as a black man, or in the UK as a black man, but you're a black British, so you know, it's not really our territory. We can't kind of come in and help you. African nationalists that migrate here can get treated in the scummiest of ways. Again, who's speaking up? Who has to answer to who? There's no one that they have to answer to, and that's part of the issue. And that's where I do think black nationalism will help. I think it will tackle a lot of the issues that we speak on around businesses, around, let's say, even just how, let's say, Africa as a whole is currently continuously getting ripped off. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't tell me that the people, you have African oil tycoons, for example. So it's not a case of they don't know how to do these things. They do know how to do these things, but even down to land. Now, I don't want to digress too much by getting into that aspect of things.
Mm.
Just solely speaking on in Uganda, the way in which when my mum spoke about how it was laid out in terms of who owns what land, the land in terms of where the oil is brought up all around it is brought up by people who are not Ugandan. Do you get what I mean? But I think there's issues in that. There's issues in corrupt presidency, and I just basically think that there's nobody to answer to. So the black people that are in charge in countries, to me, I kind of see them as free radicals. They kind of do their own thing, and again, they answer to nobody after. Like I don't see the unity there. Like I don't see it amongst the majority. I think there's a small amount of unity. There's people that get it. There's people that see the bigger picture, that understand that. But I feel like they're very easily, and maybe it's just the way the media portrays it, but I feel like they're very easily scienced or just kind of dialed out. And I think for those reasons, I just think black nationalism would target a lot of these issues that we speak on and would kind of give black people their own standing and footing in the world, because I think it exists, but it exists in all these small little particles.
Yeah, no, you know what? I agree with what you're saying, man. I don't have this whole entire episode. I've agreed with near enough everything you said. I feel like we're definitely on the same page. I feel like when you're talking about even just the whole African, leaders and corrupt leaders and whatnot, in order for us to achieve this black nationalism, I personally feel we're gonna have to correct a lot of stuff going on right now in Africa and the reason, like I said, the reason why I say Africa is because everyone is caught up with the Americans. It's a little bit different. Yeah, I can understand why there is an FBA movement or an ADOS movement. For those of you who don't know what FBA or ADOS is, you can look it up. But basically, ADOS is an acronym for African Descendants of Slavery, and FBA is something that I think Tariq Nasheed made up, which is Foundational Black American. Now, I may not agree with some of the stuff that both these groups do, especially the ADOS group as well. But I do feel it's very divisive in this current time. And I've always used the example of people. So basically what the argument is this, yeah, the black Americans, or I should say the FBA, Foundational Black Americans, those that actually are from the actual continent itself. So those that apparently who were not slaves from Africa. And I know people may find it confusing, but yes, they were black people prior to slavery that were living in America already. Now, some of these Americans identify with them, and they basically say how they are foundational black Americans, and a lot of immigrants, or I should say migrant workers from a lot of Africans that have come into the US to work as workers, like for example, from Ghana, Nigeria, West Africa, South Africa, all over Africa, get treated differently to some of the Americans, black or foundational black Americans that are there. So they feel the need to create a group to, subsidize themselves, because they believe once they get reparations, that they will rather it not go to like a Caribbean, immigrant or whatever in their eyes, where they're more deserving of that in America, that the foundational black Americans think they're more deserving of reparations than others. Now, I can understand why they are attached to America, because obviously, again, 500 years of slavery, you've built the country, your great grandparents are there. You have a right to own what's there in it. I get that. But when we're finding with the black nationalist mindset is if now one of those Americans now come to Africa or the UK and they experience police brutality, who's going to protect them? Are we going to turn around and say, you see where I'm coming from? Like, and this is where the black nationalism comes in as a whole, as a, entire group. Sorry, as an entire group of people together. We need to look at definitely, definitely like learning to, like, just even sitting there and thinking to yourself, right, like, what am I really doing? How's my full-time job serving me? How's all these different things I'm doing in Britain, serving me as a person? Because at the end of the day, am I happy in what I'm doing? Does it work for me as a black person here? Am I consistently struggling? The ex-American or African, sorry, the ex-AU ambassador to America, Dr. Chikorari. I can't pronounce her name, and forgive me if I forget it wrong. But she made a very good point. She's like, why have we got, there's more Nigerian doctors in America and Britain than there is in Nigeria. So you mean to tell me that even a portion of those doctors can't come back and build the same infrastructures that they complain about Nigeria not having?
Yeah.
You see where I'm coming from? Yes, we will face our own difficulties there, as you will face anywhere, but it hasn't worked.
That's the thing. I think the way in which society is built today, though, as well, it has people so comfortable that people are so scared of change. There's this false sense of being comfortable. It's like the whole, and it's kind of like that whole idea, the ideology of, you go to school, then you go to secondary school, then you go to college, maybe get a part-time job, you go to university, you get a really good paying job. When you come out, then you get married, you have kids, or you buy a house, sorry, you get married, then you have kids, or get married, buy a house, have kids, whichever way. But it's like that false ideology that makes people believe that I'm comfortable, I'm safe. If I go uni and get a job, I'm going to be good. And then most people have gone uni and realised that actually, no, I need to do something else. So actually, no, this ain't really what I'm 100% interested in. This ain't my passion. It's not my drive. People start to understand how the economy works. And it's like, actually, I want more, And so you see people then kind of scrambling at those later stages. And it's not a case of where it's impossible for people to make those changes. I just think when you add in all these other commitments like children, mortgage, it makes the idea of taking those risks a lot more of a it makes it seem a bit harder. So I feel like it's the same idea that people have with going back to Africa. It's like, oh, well, if I go back, what am I going to do? It's like that fear of change, because they're in a false sense of comfortability here until things like recession hits and people are losing all their jobs.
Yeah, I think, you know what, to achieve black nationalism in Africa, just in like what you're saying, we need to really remove that mindset of non-tolerance when it comes to black people. Like, I've seen people struggle in the UK, just to even live in a, like, one of my friends, one of my old school friends from back in the day, his parents moved to Dagenham, and they were going through so much racial abuse. And I used to be like, they're Nigerian. I used to be like, raw, like, why do you guys even tolerate this? Like, I don't understand that. Why is it even, oh, because we want to, the housing here is better, and why would I live in South London? South London is just full of this, is full of that. And, they have their reasons, but I don't get why people would tolerate racism in a complete area that's complete, alien to what they know and what they believe in, to then go back to their own home country and talk about, oh, I tried to build a house once and they took my money, so I'm done. Or
It's true.
you see where I'm coming from? Like, it's like, right, like, how could you not even sit there and say that? You lot have worked for 45 years in these countries where, especially for our parents and our older generation, where they were like shouting racist remarks towards you, and you lot wasn't even getting paid the same at one point, and then now you lot go back home and one project has gone left, and it's like, oh, I'm done with Ghanaian people, I'm done with Nigerian people, I'm done with Ugandan people, or whatever. I feel like that's very ignorant. We need to remove that mindset, and we need to understand. Yes, it's gonna be hard, but it's going to be worth it in the long run, because what happens?
Yeah, but I think the fact is as well, there's people doing it. Like, it's not that no one's doing it. You always hear about everyone's failed attempts, but there's many people that are doing it. They're doing it, and they're succeeding. They're fine. Literally, there's so many people that are doing it. So many people there's people that that went uni around same time we did, and they are there. Like, they went to the same uni, and they're out there in their native country, being like, I'm building a hotel, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and they've been doing it. Do you get what I mean? So it's like, it's not impossible. Obviously, there has to be a plan in place, and maybe I think plans also deter people, because people don't always stick to what they say they're going to do. But it is that case of, of making it work for yourself. It just makes sense. And I think most people do have the idea that they're aware, like, yeah, it does make sense. I can see how this can happen. But it's the idea of putting that plan into motion where I think a lot of people are getting stuck.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Definitely, man. I want to close with this now. I feel like you You've hit the nail on the head a lot today, boy. I'll tell you that. I feel like definitely with people are doing it in Africa. I know plenty. When I'm looking at Ghana, yeah, and I'm sitting down, I'm thinking to myself, you know, and I need people to understand this as well, yeah. For all those all lives matter people that will be talking about, oh, you know, that's racist, and that's just it's not just the same. It's not racist. When we're talking about black nationalism, we're talking about us having our own right to our own actual identity and freedom. You know, when we're dealing with situations of like, look at the other day, there was one guy on Instagram I follow called Omega Axel, and I think it just happened yesterday or 2 days ago. He got racially profiled by some police officers in Malaga in Spain. Innit? He was on a scooter. He wasn't wearing a mask at the time, and the mask was inside his bag. The officers asked him, "Where's his mask?" He's like pointing to his bag. Obviously, the officers acting like he can't understand what he's saying. You know, because again, the officer speaking Spanish and he's speaking English. So, and then you're then getting them obviously forcefully arresting him, putting him in handcuffs and whatnot. You know, keeping him locked up in the cell. People are trying to get him out of the actual, you know, the police station at the time. Police are lying to those people saying, "Oh, he's not even here. He hasn't been, you know, taken in just yet." You saw him coming from when he was there. So in that situation, if there was a black nationalist society or mindset, you know, I think he had friends there already, and obviously people on Instagram that were consistently, you know, shouting for his release. But you would have a representative that would fly over, yeah, or he would contact a representative in the UK, for example. Someone would fly over, or even in Africa. You know, it could be Ghana, it could be Uganda, it could be Morocco, it could be Congo. Somebody would fly over with a lawyer, yeah, contact the Spanish government and say to them, "You've got one of our people in locked up, and can we get a reason?" Oh yeah, basically right, okay, you're saying he's gonna show up in court. Have you given a legal representative? You know the ones there, like all these questions will
Yeah.
be asked, and then you know this person's flown over there. If need be, he's flown over there, and he's actually going to represent one of us. That's what we need. People like,
Yeah.
oh, what do you mean, bro? That happens for Chinese people. That
But I
happens.
think it's a fact that like the way in which Africa still gets treated today in regards to how can you still, it's like theft. It's like me going into a jewelry shop and being like, can I have the most expensive thing in your shop, but I'm going to buy it from you for £1, yeah? Just so we're doing business, and I'll keep that going. Like, clearly being shortchanged, clearly being bumped. That I don't know where that money's going into the economy of actually building Africa. I don't know. I've never seen it be clearly explained. You know, step by step along the way. It's like Africa's getting conned out of so much. Yeah, you've got people that go there to experiment, to take advantage, and they get away with it. So it's like that to me alone is a very clear example of how of why a black nationalism is needed. At the end of the day, it's like literally most other countries have that. They all have somebody to answer to. There's always, it's kind of like if you do something bad, there's always someone you've got an answer to. There's a consequence. And the reality is that the people that are being answered to, like let's say in this society or in America, for example, the people you're answering to is a racist police force. The whole police force might not be racist. However, there's been a lot of excuses made for a lot of, like, I don't know, let me even scrap that. For the fact that when you look at Rich 32 and his dad, what happened? And they're saying, oh, we can't see no, what do they say? They can't see any misconduct in what they
Yeah,
did.
they can't see any misconduct in what they did. Basically, they believe the police, you know,
Acted
acted
lawfully. Yeah.
lawfully. Yeah.
And it's
Mm.
mad. But you're like, the reason, to me, I think the reason they can't agree that there was something wrong is because they don't want to start a ruckus. Because the second you admit that you're doing something wrong, now you've admitted it, people can't keep smoke screening the reality of what's going on.
There is a big aspect. This is what I was trying to explain to people. Sorry to interject, but
Mm.
about that with admitting, you know, a lot of these police officers know what they're doing. Like, and the reason why I know they know what they're doing, or a lot of these, you know, white racist people know what they're doing, is because I used to work with them. I used to go out on drinks with these people when I didn't understand racism, and you would hear them make jokes, and you're like, why is it on a normal day you're not making these jokes to me when you're basically sober and you're at work or whatnot? Why is it that you guys are different? But when the minute you're out of your comfort zone, or say the minute you're out in your comfort zone, I should say, and the alcohol's flowing and whatnot, you've got all these racial jokes, but then it's the way you make them, because people turn around and say, oh, well, they're drunk. They don't know what they're saying. Why do you start off with, hey, can I make a joke? You're making jokes throughout the whole entire conversation. When it comes to a black or racist joke, you're asking for permission, which means you know what you're doing. So that identity of, that element of them admitting, again, because they, like you said, the police know what they were doing. You tasered a 65-year-old man, like and inside his house. So I don't understand how you're in somebody's house with somebody at the age of 65 and you need to use force in their house. Outside on the street, cool, we could run away. He's inside his house, like on the stairs. Disrespectful. And it just shows, even though Wretch is a musician and has contributed to the UK music scene and society a lot, they still have no respect for him and his family. Do you see where I'm coming from? So
no, and I think
yeah.
it's the same thing Jay-Z says on his 411 album. He says it throughout. Like it, I think it. Oh,
444.
I'm sure it's 444. Yeah, it's that song where I'm sure he's talking and he's like, basically, what he's trying to say is, no matter what level you get to, no matter how rich you think you are still, when it comes down to it, perceived in that way. And another thing as well, I think it's the same thing. I think Jada and Will Smith said when they were talking about the Oscars, they're like, at some point you have to stop trying to fit in and begging for acceptance. I think it was to do with the Oscars. This was a few years back when
when he didn't win an Oscar for what movie was that? Was it Above the Earth or something? I know what movie you're talking about still.
But I don't even think it was just him. I think there were many black actors who weren't even so many, and it was like they made the point, at some point you have to stop begging to fit in. What do you do if you can't fit in? Make your own. And I think there's that hesitation. I think it goes back to what I was saying before. Every time there has been an own and a built up, it gets knocked down. People want to talk about BET. You take in the mix. Do you know who owns BET today?
Tell them who owns BET. Tell them.
Literally, let me even just make sure I get it correct. Yeah.
I'm sure. I think it was that he sold it. I think it was a black guy that sold it to this white guy. I can't remember his name again, but yeah.
Yeah, it was. So originally it was black owned, and it was sold on. It says owned by Viacom.
Right. Well, Viacom. Let's not even Viacom. As we get into Viacom, they're the same guys that have just recently fired Nick Cannon for his so-called anti-Semitic, so-called anti-Semitic views, and which are basically, if you watch, not to digress, but again, it does circle around the topic of integration and black nationalism. If you look at his situation, just to touch on that quickly, if you watch the clip with him and Professor Griff, because I watched that video before it was trending, and I know where he's coming from and what he's talking about, and it wasn't anti-Semitic. He didn't perpetrate any violence towards Jewish people or whatnot. He was just explaining that if you're going to say you're a Semite, if you're going to say we're Semites or we're Jews, if you guys accept that we're the definition of Semite, is of anyone of the Arabic or Hebrew or whatever race, because the Jews, again, are of a mixed breeded generation, and I know a lot of people will get upset when I say this, but, look it up. If you look at the word Semite or Semite, do someone come from, to be part of or be part of too. So how could we be anti-Semitic if we're speaking our truth and we are the same? If you go to Israel, which I've been, and you see the Jews that are there, you tend to find that there's a lot of Hebrews that are there, Sudanese Hebrews, that are not treated the same way as the Ashkenazi Jews or the white Hebrews that are there. Do you see where I'm coming from? So he was just basically saying that, bro, like, and within, obviously, he was quoting Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, her literature inside her book called The Isis Papers, which deals with the neurochemical melanin And she speaks about, yes, you know, when you're in a colder and harsher environment, because a lot of people said it was pseudoscience. How could white people naturally be crazy or savages? And she wasn't explaining it as every single white person on the earth, but she was explaining the origins of where this savagery comes from. And we can look at it through history. We can look at it, the Crusaders. You know, we can look at the Catholic orders. We can look at the actual Vikings. We can look at the Romans, you know, the
Yeah.
Greeks. There's always an aspect of brutality and savagery, killing, conquering, murdering, and taking over a people. So that's all he was explaining. But again, in order to integrate in society, in order to actually be one, he's later on had to apologize because, again, as a celebrity, you're owned. People think, oh, because he owns Wild 'N Out, or because he owns all these other different, you know, rate like shows and whatnot. That's cool. Viacom obviously was the network that was airing Wild 'N Out, and that was the partnership. So they fired him, or I would say they fired him. They basically stopped showing Wild 'N Out, so he doesn't have a job or position there.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
now Viacom's in charge of BET. You can
But
already
even
see
if just but even when
go
you
on.
watch how it goes, so Viacom's in charge of BET, and the parent company to Viacom
Mm.
is National Amusements, who have 80% voting rights, yeah, on whatever happens in Viacom, and obviously whatever else they own. And that's owned by the founder was Michael Redstone. Is currently owned by Sumner Redstone. So when people like to do this, oh, but you know, you've got Black Entertainment Channel or Black Entertainment Television, and you know, if we opened up a channel that was White Entertainment Channel or XYZ or the other, it's all bogus, it's all nonsense, yeah, because it's all owned still.
Yeah,
Who's it owned by? And the
yeah,
reality is that the reality of it is if it wasn't, it probably still wouldn't be airing to today, because who controls what you see on the TV?
yeah. White
Like
people, white
Indian
Europeans
people,
have it.
Asian people, like Indian, Pakistani, Bengali, they've got their own network of movies, and that's fine. Nobody's challenged it. No one's ever challenged it. No one's ever spoken against it. Where I live, there's quite a big Asian community. So in well, I don't live in Ilford, but it's like nearby.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a whole there's like they do. I think there was a Bollywood Bowl in Ilford. There was
All right, okay.
also a the cinema showed a lot of Asian movies that were coming out live from Asia. I don't know where else they do that.
That's true. Where's the Nollywood cinema?
Nowhere, literally. So it's like it literally, well, not in the UK anyway. So it literally is a case of it's mad to think that people are so offended that Black people are just asking for the same.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
literally it.
it's crazy, man. It's crazy. Like, but with Nick Cannon again, it just shows you the ownership I was coming from with Nick Cannon's situation was integrity and owning your words, owning your truth. If I was him, because everyone's like, oh, you know, there's bare Black people that wouldn't have supported him. Black people love to say this and that, which is partly true. There is people he could have went to Master P. He could have went to Diddy offered him a place at Revolt. I'm just
Mm.
saying, I'm not saying, you know, Diddy's probably the best option, but, and I know Revolt TV may be owned by a percentage of whatever. But again, you know, there was options there. Now, for me, if I was Nick Cannon, I would have been like, all right, cool. I'm not perpetrating hate and I'm standing on my square, which he did at first, but he folded. But I would have been like, come on my Cannon's Class podcast, yeah, or show and debate me. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Why is it anti-Semitic the minute I mention anything to do with Jewish people? You see where I'm coming from?
Mm.
Why is it deemed that when you start to understand, you know, what was going on? So I would have been like, all right, come prove me wrong and come debate me, come and educate me. Let's learn together. If we're about building, let's learn. You know, what you find is he's invited a Jewish rabbi onto his platform, and the Jewish rabbi is educating him on Jewish history, which is, in my perception, wrong, because it's like, we're not here to learn about the Jewish history. I'm telling you what I've learned about Jewish history. Come in combat and say, come and tell me if I'm wrong. You know, just prove me wrong first, or prove me right. Then we can have a discussion, because you find they don't ever apologize when they insult us. You know, everyone has an issue with, you know, rappers saying things about, you know, Jewish money or Jewish bank or the crooked Jews or whatever. But they don't have an issue with them using the word nigger, bitch, a hoe, you know, pimping these girls. They don't have an issue with none of that derogatory form towards black people, but they have an issue when it is towards them. So that's just my little 50 pence on the whole Nick Cannon situation. But again, back to ownership and sorry, back to black nationalism and obviously integration. It hasn't worked for us. We do need black nationalism, and I feel like the only way to achieve that or to start achieving that is thinking black, looking at other areas and situations. Like I said before, it started in Africa. And again, you know, if there are white people that are willing to work with us, I don't even have to even say that, because when you go to Africa, you can already see how much we embrace other cultures. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, essentially it is black nationalism first. So before we end,
I
have
think
you
the
got
thing
anything
is, what
else?
to quote is just, well, not to
Yeah.
quote, sorry, to just notice that there's a reason why it is such a feared idea of black people having their own. There's a reason why there's a concern around that. And I think when it comes down to it, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, I do think to some degree racism is implemented as a distraction for people who aren't on the top. And I think the reason why it is a problem and it's being pushed against so harshly, not by people, not by local people who don't necessarily have an impact on the bigger picture. Like, they obviously contribute to it, but they don't direct it or impact it in that way, is because business wise is, I think it always comes down to business and money. If you're trying to keep wealth in your family and your family's built off the back of the slave trade that's already occurred, or and that's still occurring, the modern day slavery, the way in which let's say people in these so-called third world countries are treated. If I've made my wealth off of that, and I know that I'm still trying to feed my family for generations to come, there's going to be a problem the second that becomes that stops being how it's been. You know, the second there's changes, or, you know, there's the idea of nationalism, because where do most of the resources come from? Africa, we know that. So there's going to be a big problem if Africa stops and says, actually, you need to pay us equally. That immediately starts taking money out of people's pockets, that the people that are kind of pulling the strings, they're bothered about their pockets. So there's no way they're going to let that happen. So there's the trickle down of division and the ideology of black people are less, keep treating them as less, keep putting these ceilings in place so they don't ever come around to this idea, or even if they do have the idea, they can't put it into action. And I think, to me, that's the base reason as to why it has been made so difficult, and as to why it's such a feared thing. And it is feared. I don't think it's a thing that can't happen. I think there's a lot of fear around it, and I think that's literally why. It's a very easy answer.
Yeah, 100%, man. 100%. But yeah, that's it's really peak still. You're right with all of that. I feel like the fear. I know Professor Griff, funny enough, and a guy called Red Pill said they had this lecture called "The Fear of a Black Planet," and the idea of what you're just saying right now is very, very true. The fear of actually black people. It's like and I'm going to end with it now. But I was watching a debate from a guy called Sarah Garvey and Tommy Robinson. It's called the Racism Debate. I'll try and send you guys the video link in the group. But basically, Tommy Robinson was basically saying Black Pound Day is wrong and it's racist because we're basically excluding our money and ourselves away from the community, and it's causing more division. So it's like, it was very funny because I'm looking at him, and then the guy Sarah Garvey was like, if you guys think that that is racism or that's racist, you guys have nothing to worry about. You guys have nothing to worry about, because literally that doesn't come with any violence, that doesn't come with any, you know, police brutality, that doesn't come with any segregation. That's just us basically taking our money back and spending it within our own community. And it is that fear. It is that fear. So when black people are trying to rise up to the top, when we're trying to grow as a nation, and then you see people talking about white people talking about, oh no, that's I don't think we should have a Black Pound Day. That's wrong, and that then well, oh well. Like, at the end of the day, we've been excluded anyway. Do you see where I'm coming from? Whenever you
Yeah.
guys now want to have your foot down in a specific culture, when you have your foot or your neck on a specific people, oh, it's not racism. That's just how it is. Or well, we had, you know, like they love to do the whole, oh well, black people are racist too, and oh well, and then they white people struggle too. Listen, man, we're not playing that debate right now. I'm not even going to speak on that. If you have an issue with black people establishing black nationalism or trying to not integrate anymore because of the reaction of us integrating, you know, deaths, the police brutality, the racism in the infrastructure, systematic racism, I can go on,
Yeah.
then you have literally nothing to worry about. Trust me, because at the end of the day, we're gonna now start doing for self, and that's it.